I'm Gretchen Edelmon. I'm at NI, and I've been at NI for over a couple decades with a little hiatus in the middle off to where I taught middle school and wrote curriculum at the freshman engineering level and came back. And so kind of blended my engineering background with that learning experience into the role I have now of creating our digital learning experience.
And I'm Ben Zimmer. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Enable Education. We're Canadian. We're based just outside of Toronto, and we're a relatively small boutique service firm that helps our clients to make really great learning experiences. So we're a development partner, and we're going to spend a lot of time talking about the nature of our relationship with NI.
So we're excited to tell you a bit about our journey working together on educational content and technology over the past 10 plus years. So looking back over the succession of projects that you're seeing on the screen, they span an evolution from textbooks and downloadable PDFs, remember those, to interactive online learning environments. When I look at this carousel of images now, it almost makes it feel like it happened so fast. We've accomplished a lot, but really it has taken quite a bit of time to get where we are, and we're not done yet. Picking a development partner for us was something that was a critical inflection point on our ability to move forward at the beginning when we first started working on this digital learning experience, and has really helped us in many times along the way. And picking the development partner, of course, we had to really focus on what could we do internally, what could a development partner do for us, what were we missing, and finding someone that you could really work well with together. So I'm curious if that's common, that more people do this or not. All right, so I'm going to jump to the first lesson, which is about embracing phase development. So what happened was we had a project with a university system in Mexico. There were over 100 campus locations that wanted to adopt NI academic technology to use in their engineering classrooms. So the professors needed instructional content, they needed labs, they needed materials to use with all that equipment, because this was things from sound measurement, vibration measurement, temperature measurement, robotics, all kinds of typical engineering curriculum topics. And they had to know how to teach with NI products. So we needed the content. They wanted it to be engaging and interactive. Everyone says that, right? So we needed to know, what did they really mean? So we all went on a trip to Mexico City, and our local sales rep there took us around for several days from city to city, visiting all these universities. And we were doing these focused sessions directly with the professors. About halfway through those sessions, it was around a week, like a work week. So about halfway through, it became clear that we were really trying to promote and advocate for something they just weren't ready to do yet. Their infrastructure just wasn't going to support it. Enable had already been working actively on a remote lab platform called LabMS, where you could log in like an LMS, but you could do labs and have interactive reports and communicate with other students, and just a lot of really interesting but cloud-based functionality. And the professors were just really, they just didn't feel like it was going to work. So after we spent one evening kind of brainstorming on whether part of our solution just needed to be, well, let's add a bunch of servers. Let's include the servers that we put on site so they can have all the bandwidth they need. We just really had to step back and say, they're not ready for this yet. So our interactive turned into an installable, lightweight HTML framework that each student could install and run locally on their computer. It could be in the lab computers, and it still did navigate them from lesson to lesson.
With regard to the framework, we always had, and I think it's part of the role of a development partner to have a passion and a view for the art of the possible, and I think that's something we're going to talk about, and being able to articulate and share that vision. What has been really helpful is this framework, which you see here. And so the idea here is that there is a continuum from the left-hand side to the right-hand side, where on the left is the use of technology or the use of a new approach is a direct substitute. So an example of that might be going from printed to PDF, or if we were to at least fast forward into the last decade, maybe it's taking a lecture into dropping a PowerPoint and a video into Thought Industries. That would be substitution. It's not fundamentally changing the learning really at all. Augmentation is a little bit more of an enhancement. Now you might benefit from the ability to search to discover course content or individual lessons. You might add note-taking, you might add quizzes. It's definitely an enhancement, it's an augmentation, but fundamentally it's still the same learning experience. And then you move across the wall, if you will, into the transformation side, and you think about modification. So this may be where the learning changes form. So the learning might now be something built in Captivate or Storyline. It's something interactive. The assessments, instead of just quizzes, might be more authentic. They might be basic simulations. And then go all the way forward into redefinition. And this is where like the sky's the limit. Now we're talking about virtual reality, augmented reality, chatbots, the kind of simulations that are super authentic and high fidelity and maybe look more like games, 3D games, than anything else. And within this framework, and I won't speak for you, Gretchen, but I know it's been really helpful for us to say with great intentionality, okay, budget, timeline, constraints has us focusing on augmentation, but we have a view to the future. We started our life, and Abel started our life as a consultant doing software development. And we came into education by creating a course or specifically around LabVIEW. So we got introduced to the ecosystem and the key players in Austin at NI because we actually created some digital learning before they did. And it was a really interesting journey to get involved with the people that we kind of worried that we were competing with, these big guys, this multi-billion-dollar company out of Austin, and we're just this 10, 20 person company in Canada. But quite the opposite happened because we had very specific domain knowledge. We had a lot of understanding and capability. It lent itself really well to partnership and while we many years ago have shelved that content we created, it's interesting how the same digital learning approaches have continued to resurface over the years. So in this case, we had subject matter expertise and domain knowledge in this realm. But that's no longer the story for the way we work with almost all of our clients, that we are the specialists in creating digital learning content.
I think that's helped us a lot is we have a really common shared vision of where we want this to go later. And then the understanding of our general customer audience right away is certainly helpful. That's definitely been a big benefit. I thought we could share some specific details about one time when we were tenacious in a certain way that actually led to us getting approval to work on one of the projects we had worked on. So in the Wayback Carousel, Ben referenced the printed manuals, and the picture right before that from 2011 was our search page. It was the very original, like what we would have called a portal or kind of a learning center for our academic content. It was a place where our students and professors were supposed to come find all this great content we were making for them, but it really was just a static search results page. You could filter some things, but there was no ability at all to do UI design or visual elements. We couldn't even really rearrange the page or highlight things. It was literally just a search results page. So we're working on all this really great content, but no one was finding it. So we knew we needed a better experience, a better portal. We had been working internally at NI at that point to get approval from our IT and web teams to build us this new experience. And we have an internal process where you submit your requests, you give a bunch of information, a series of processes and different layers of review. Eventually you get prioritized or not. So we were consistently not getting prioritized to get their time and effort, which we were completely understanding because we're a pretty small, important, but a pretty small piece of the overall NI picture at the time. And the projects that they were working on were much more enterprise-wide and transformational for the commercial level customers. So we didn't give up, but what we had to really do is each of those cycles, from the first to second, we might not have been as keen on this, but really from the second to the third time, we started advocating out of cycle, really starting to do more competitive analysis, more customer input, like really building the concept documents and the ROI details to show why we needed to do this, why it was important to do it sooner, and how we could do it with a sectional partner, because Ben kept reminding me that, we were software people first. We've been doing all this content with you, but we really know software. And at that point, we just hadn't done a development project. And our web team was pretty cautious, understandably, about other people externally actually building things that were front and center on our website. Doing content or standalone projects were fine, but we were able through this just to continually to advocate and communicate with people and find out what the objections were and show that we could do it and promise to work closely with the IT teams and follow the rules, like follow it just as if we were an internal team. What would be required about the design? What would be required about single sign-on or branding or even like localization, all those kinds of things. And we finally did get the permission. And so that was the first step. What you see on the screen is what we ended up there with a new teaching resources portal that was interactive and searchable and linked into our online learning platform that enabled developers.
I mean, I also remember the importance of our professional relationship, Gretchen, like this idea of having an internal champion who has your own business objectives to achieve, but you see the value in working with a partner like us. And so there's a lot of exchange of information. There's a lot of transparency. So I'm continuously telling you and showing you cool projects we've done for other clients so that you have that in your mind. I've already mentioned kind of this idea of the art of the possible. So, I mean, that comes to mind, that if we didn't have, I think, that kind of relationship, then I think both sides, it would have been very difficult to be able to build something, even when there was still a fair bit of ambiguity of scope. Oftentimes you don't know what you don't know and you don't know what you need. You just have business goals and you have certain skill sets, and you may not have that complementary skill set of someone who can envision, oh yeah, I've seen this before, I can imagine da, 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 da. So I think that ability to form a relationship where, yeah, you can kind of start a project without knowing all of the details. Or you can enter an analysis stage or an initial consultative stage, and we've done lots of that stuff. And you just have enough trust that at some point you have, and we've had these conversations, it's like, okay, this is getting out of hand. How are we gonna manage this? How are we gonna deliver on time? We have to adjust the scope. And yeah, at the end of the day, it comes down to trust. It's always important to have people with different lenses sitting in on these things, sometimes tweaking the questions in advance, but also listening to and interpreting. Because maybe it goes without saying, but the product development engineer is going to have a different view on someone's feedback than, you know, the digital learning consultant might, or the person who's ultimately going to create the curriculum, or the person who is going to build the digital platform that surrounds all this stuff, the glue that ties the learning together. So I always really appreciated that opportunity, but it was, I think, necessary for my team to be able to see and hear what the learner actually needed and wanted, and understand their careabouts. I mean, I think not just the content, but I think just to call back to the relationship and the importance of the relationship, this architecture that we were able to envision and ultimately deploy that has led to all these kind of longer term benefits. I mean, we could only get there because we had visibility, we had transparency, we had a seat at the table with Gretchen and her colleagues to understand what the longer term business goals were. What I always want is to form a relationship that's long term by plugging in wherever there's gaps and being able to see a longer term picture. And, I think Gretchen talked specifically about IT and web and kind of the integration side of things. And, one of the benefits I think that development partners have is they don't just work for you. They work for a variety of other clients in a variety of other industries, and they have hands-on experience with best practices and sometimes some wounds from doing things the wrong way or working in having various lessons learned. One of the things that I think we see very consistently is that a bottleneck for learning solutions often lies in the web and IT infrastructure side of things. And, I was very proud when Enable was kind of one of the first organizations that was brought in to provide that kind of work alongside NI's web team, and to make it all work in a very complicated situation.